How good are you with money? Understanding how money works and how to manage debt and savings and all of that. The Financial Times consumer editor Claer Barrett has revealed the striking statistic that nearly half of adults feel they need urgent help managing their money, with young people in particular blaming the absence of formal financial education for landing them in debt later in life. Claer, half of all adults, if this survey is a reflection of the UK, does that number surprise you?
Well, in some ways, I'm surprised it's not more, especially at the moment when we're all faced by this cost of living crisis. I mean, one really important point to make, Chris on Twitter has just tweeted about it, these half of the population, can they not manage what they have, or do they not have enough? And these are two quite distinct things. Now, obviously, if you are in a deficit budget where the money you've got coming in won't cover the essentials and energy bills are tipping you into crisis point, that's very different from somebody who potentially does have enough but isn't keeping an eye on their spending and isn't budgeting in particular. It's budgeting is the skill that is the one that people are really saying they need help with. But if we look at what happens if you don't keep an eye on the numbers, I mean, the financial world, you might feel in some ways that they're out to get you. Companies are bamboozling. Small print is lengthy. There are lots of ways that they can make money out of customers who don't pay more attention to what's going on, whether that's rolling onto a higher rate or, being charged too much. But I think behind this, a lot of the problem is an aversion to numbers. It's really common to hear people saying that they hate maths, and that can easily morph into a feeling that you can't do money. But if you make a mistake, it's just so costly. Dip into your overdraft because you get things wrong, 40% interest on most of those. If you have to turn to credit cards, they can be 20%, some can be 50% if you don't have a good credit score. And this whole concept that finance is seen as hard and complicated and people want to bury their heads in the sand, I completely sympathise with that, because when I was much younger, I was a drifter financially. I didn't open the bank statements. I didn't pay attention to things. Like many young people, I had better things to do, and I just spent all the money in my bank account until I got paid and just hoped that I wouldn't run out. But a lot of that stems from anxiety. I thought, well, this is all very hard. But I actually found later in life, when I started to overcome my fear, that I was so much less anxious when I did look at the numbers and understand what I was spending and make steps to budget. And that made me calmer calmer and in control. And I think perhaps that is a bit of the thing that's missing.
Well, that's useful advice. I wonder what else, thinking of budgeting, how else would you advise people?
Well, everybody needs a budget. It doesn't matter how much or how little you earn. If you don't make a plan for your money, it will just go. Now, examining your financial data, this is the place where you need to start, but it's never been easier if you've got an online bank account, an app. The digital banks are particularly good, but the rest of the banks are all catching up. So it's never been easier to look at what you're spending on. If you look at how much you're spending on things like Amazon or Ubers or discretionary purchases, Deliveroo, say, takeaways over the course of a month, over the course of a year, and scale it up, the answers could really surprise you. And then you can really easily use triggers on apps to set limits and change your behaviour. One thing that I do is I work out a budget for the month of what I can spend on what I call lifestyle spending, the nice to haves, the things that you can choose not to spend money on. So I give myself a set amount, I put it on a separate bank account, a digital bank account, and that's the only card that I take out with me when I leave the house. So I kind of train myself to stick to a budget. But don't try and do everything at once. Set yourself like a weekly or a monthly goal, and it's a big task to take on, overhauling your finances. So my advice would be do it bit by bit.
Claer, thank you. I want to bring Guy Rigden into the conversation, CEO of MyBnk, a financial independence charity providing financial education for children and vulnerable young adults. I suppose this chimes very much with your thinking.
Yes, absolutely, Eddie, and afternoon to you.
Hi.
I think Claire's brought up a lot of very relevant points, from sort of knowledge to confidence to budgeting, and a lot of themes run through everything. We're the largest specialist UK charity directly delivering financial education to young people in the UK, as you mentioned. And first of all, I'd like to say that based on working with around 300,000 in the last dozen years, around 8 out of 10 are not too bad with money. but they could all be made better through effective financial education. And of course, that leaves 2 in 10 that can be made a lot better and have an influence on them. And I think, Claer picked up that, if you like, financial well-being is not just about better choices, which is what we're talking about here, but can be more money, legislation, nudging cheaper goods and so on to really improve things. So in that education and influencing, I think the problem is there is an awful lot of spending out there designed to park people from their money, around 20 billion of advertising spend in the UK, and a lot of guidance that's linked to selling. So you need, I think, organisations such as MyBnk and others that come in with relevant, independent and proven financial education that works, because I think the context of the question is absolutely being good with money means having the confidence and motivation to choose what is right for them in their circumstances. And I agree with Claer, it starts with budgeting.
Thank you both. Guy Rigden, CEO of MyBnk, and before that Claer Barrett, consumer editor of the Financial Times.